ॐ स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः। वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुम्। So in the last class we were studying the 60 from 64th to the 66th verse of the second chapter of Shrimad Bhagavad Gita, where in the 65th verse we found that the serenity of mind results in twofold action. So what's the twofold action which follows the serenity of mind? First is the eradication of all sorrows, and second is that one gets established in wisdom. Prasade sarvadukhanam hanir asya upajayate. That's the first result which ensues from tranquility. And the second is prasanna chetaso hi ashu buddhi paryava tishthate. That's the second. The first is hani asya upajayate. What's hani asya upajayate? Hani means eradication. Upajayate, ensues. The eradication ensues. What eradication of what? Sarva dukkhana. That all sorrows, without leaving even a trace of sorrow. It's not that the life is interspersed with joy and sorrow. The sorrow is eradicated once for all. That happens when one gets established in that tranquility. And the second is prasanna hi chetaso ashu. Prasanna chetosha hi asu. Buddhi paryava tishthate. His buddhi, that gets established. Means what? He never wavers in his decision. His wisdom has now been established. So what's the two things that in the last class we were discussing? That with the tranquility of the mind, the likes and dislikes, they fall off. It is the likes and dislikes, the worries, the tensions, the anticipations that we are always carrying as the baggage. It's just like a baggage which we are always carrying around us. And we got so much habituated with that baggage. Sometimes we don't realize that we are carrying a huge load with us in the form of, is a psychological load, in the form of worries, tensions, expectations, anticipations. All these in the form of a baggage is always with us. We are carrying it. And we got so habituated, we never realize that we are carrying it. Now, suppose you are carrying a bag for a long time, you got so habituated, you never realize that you are carrying a huge weight, and suddenly you sit down and the bag is removed from you. Immediately you realize a let go sensation ensues. You have a sense of relaxation. Then you realize that I got so habituated with this weight, I was not realizing that I am constantly stressed. Only when the weight is taken away, then that relaxation ensues. So this is the prasada. Once for all, when the likes and dislikes all have fallen off because of your identity with yourself, you are no more identifying yourself with the happenings of life. You're identifying yourself with the witness, the one who is witnessing all the things which are happening in life. So it's not that the dukkha stops, eradicates because all the things become favorable. It can never happen. The life has its ups and downs. It is going to be. That's the way of life. There will be ups and downs. I cannot eradicate the so-called all the frictions in life. What I can do is I can transcend them by being established as the witness self, by being identifying myself with the witness self, knowing it very, very well that this happenings is a flow. It will just pass on, in no way affecting the real me. And when it happens, when all the likes and dislikes has fallen off, then along with it, all the concerns, anticipations, expectations are bound to fall off. And that ensues in a sense of let go, which speaks of the eradication of all the suffering. When that happens, after that, another thing happens. These are the two results that we were speaking of, that with the serenity comes eradication of sorrow. So that's why very interesting. Instead of saying that you get something, a bliss, they're saying sarva dukkhanam hani rasya upajayate. If you say you get happiness, then there is a chance of confusion. You may, or we may, confuse it with any other worldly happiness, which ensues from the fulfillment of a desire, resulting in a tremendous ecstasy, a bliss. It is not speaking of that type of happiness, which ensues because of attaining some peak. When I was having a desire, the moment the desire is fulfilled, that my happiness reaches a peak and again it falls off. It's not speaking of that type of happiness. That's why instead of using the term happiness, it is using the term sarva dukkhanam hani, that all the miseries falls off, and that ensues into a type of bliss, which has nothing to do with the titillation of the nerves. Generally, we equate happiness with the titillation of nerves, with some sort of excitement. It doesn't speak of any excitement. It speaks of tranquility, relaxation, where all the worries and tensions has fallen off. So that's the one result which ensues with the tranquility of the mind. The second is prasanna chetaso hiyashu buddhi paryavatishthate. His wisdom becomes established. His intellect becomes one, that what is that he develops a tremendous intellectual conviction. There is no wavering from his conviction. How it happens? That how his intellect becomes as if clear, his mind is full of wisdom, he never wavers in his decision. What he decides always seems to be the correct. How it happens? That our likes and dislikes speaks of the biases of our mind. Our mind gets biased with the likes and dislikes. And as long as our mind is biased, we can never just take correct decisions. It's impossible. That example, first our vision gets distorted because of our biases. For that, how the vision gets distorted. That example in the Vedanta, in the yogas, in the school, we find that suppose there is a stump lying in the corner of a park, and in the twilight hours, as per our bias, we may be deluded by seeing it differently. A small child who is in search of its mother sees the stump as its mother. The mother who is searching her child, sees it as the child. A lover who is in search of his beloved sees it as his beloved. The police who is in search of the thief thinks it to be the thief. The thief who is in search of the police thinks it to be the police. So what our bias taints our vision. It's just the stump lying there. It's tainting our vision. Throughout our life, we will find our likes and dislikes taints our vision. We don't see the thing as it is. So if you are not seeing the thing as it is, how can the wisdom ensue? That is impossible. And again, we can never take the correct decision also. First, our vision is distorted, and because of the distorted vision, I can never have the correct vision, correct decision. I can never take. For that, again, there another in that allegory which Sri Ramakrishna is citing in the gospel that explains that why our intellect doesn't work properly. That he's giving the example of 3 persons who are playing the chess. 2 are playing and 1 is the witness. They all are amateurs. They're not professionals. Now, you will see the one who is witnessing, who is just seeing, he always says the correct move. Those who are playing, they always ask him to desist, try to desist him, not to say the move. Please don't say the move, let us play. But now and then he will be saying the correct move. Those who are playing, they are faltering in their steps. Why it so happens? Sri Ramakrishna is giving a very nice example. He says that those who are playing, more than half of the mind is engaged in anticipation. That I have to win, fear, I shouldn't lose. So these anticipations clouds their vision. Actually, they cannot focus on the game because the mind, because of their anticipations, worries, expectations, this mind is clouded. They cannot focus on the game. The one who is witnessing, he has nothing to do with the winning and losing. So he or she is totally focused on the game, what's going on. And that's why he can say the correct move, because the mind is totally involved in it. So that's the thing. When the one who is onlooker, he's not a good player. When he starts playing, he starts faltering because now the expectation grows. So that's the thing which we have to understand, that the more our mind is tranquil, the more the likes and dislikes has fallen off, the more the mind is free from all the bias, the more our, the wisdom works properly. If this life is a wonderful dance, we can really dance freely without any tension when we have no bias. And for that, another allegory Sri Ramakrishna is citing in the gospel, very interesting, that there one weaver was those who weave cloths. So one such weaver, after a long time, went to meet another weaver. And when he knocked the door was opened. The guest weaver was very happy, was delighted to see the host, as well as the host is happy to see the guest, for after such a long time they have met. So the host invited the guest, please come in. And then they started chit-chatting, sitting together. Now, when they were chit-chatting, the guest weaver, he's also a weaver. So naturally, he has an interest in various of these cotton balls, the thread balls, with which the host was working. A lot of various colored cotton balls, thread balls, with which she was weaving. The guest got attracted with a particular color. She liked it very much. And she developed a hankering for it. Now the host said, after such a long time you have visited, let me just bring some refreshments for you. Now she went inside to bring some refreshment. And the guest was so much lured by that particular color of the thread. He took that ball and just hide it, and he hid it under the armpit, kept it under the armpit, and she was sitting with the armpit pressed. She was sitting. Now the host came with the refreshments, and when the guest was having the refreshments, she realized one of the thread ball is missing. That's a very nice colored thread ball is missing. And she was a bit surprised. I was just working with that, where it went. And then she was looking here and there and noticed at her friend, the guest, the weaver, and realized the way she was sitting, that she was pressing her arms too tight, one of the arms too tight. And she understood what has happened, that she is hiding the thread ball under her armpit. How to get it back? Because it was a precious thing for her. She now devised a plan. When the refreshment was over, she told, after such a long time we met, I'm so elated. I'm feeling like dancing. Do you remember in our olden days, we used to dance together? Come, let us dance together. Let us celebrate this occasion. Now, the guest was really in a fix. How can she dance? But as the host was requesting again and again, insisting that come, let us dance. So at last she agreed. Now they both got up. The host was dancing freely with both the hands free. And the guest, she cannot raise one of her arms because she will be caught. She kept one of the armpit pressed and just raised only one hand, and she was dancing. Now the host again just asked him, can anyone dance this way? Is it the way you dance? Dance freely, just see how freely I'm dancing. And then the guest is saying, J in Bengali, J Jamon Jane Ben. Ben means friend. As we know, so that's why we dance. I cannot dance that way. I don't know to dance with both the hands raised that freely. I have to keep one of the hands pressed. So what it speaks of, when we have bias, we become conscious liars, because we cannot dance freely, that this particular bias doesn't allow us to be free. And then how can you think of wisdom when already you have some of your likes and dislikes, which you have made it domesticated it as your pet? You can never free yourself. Keeping that intact, we will now philosophize. To have philosophy in life is good, but most of us will be philosophizing. What is philosophizing? That keeping our likes and dislikes intact. I don't compromise with them. And now I try to explain my philosophy is based on my likes and dislikes, so that is not disturbed, that is kept nurtured. So I can never have a proper decision. I can never be a man of wisdom. So that's why this sloka speaks this wonderful thing. This is the tranquility in life. This two things is going to happen. You're going to enjoy a type of relaxation. And in your life, in spiritual life, as well as in your secular life, you will find that the wisdom is shining forth through your personality. So after saying these twofold effects, now the Lord will confirm this very idea by showing the contrary, the opposite side, in the next two verses. That if you do not have tranquility, you can never have peace. That will be spoken of in the 66th verse of the second chapter. And if you do not have tranquility, you can neither have wisdom. That will be spoken of in the 67th verse. So let us proceed to the 66th verse. What it is saying? Nasti buddhi ayuktasya nacha yuktasya bhavana nacha bhavayatah shanti ashantasya kutah sukham na asti buddhir ayuktasya. Ayukta, what it means? Not unified. When your mind is not focused, that speaks of ayukta. It's constantly like a grasshopper jumping from one spot to the another. It is a monkey mind constantly wavering from one thought to the another, one pursuit to the other pursuit. That is ayukta. It's not focused. It is not connected, conjoined to a particular ideal. So for such a person, ayukta, there cannot be any buddhi. You cannot, this buddhi means the decisive faculty. Means in Vedanta, they divide the mind into 4 parts. It's actually not 4 parts. These 4 way the mind works. As per the 4 way the mind works, the mind is divided into, has been nomenclatured in 4 ways. What are they? This mana, buddhi, chitta, ahankara. Mana, buddhi, chitta, ahankara. So what is mana? Mana is the, as per definition in Vedanta, it is sankalpa vikalpatmak. That with so many things, we just take a resolution, we think over it, and then we think, no, let me not do it at all. Or even if I do it at all, I will do it in a different way. The way at the beginning I thought, I change my plan. No, I won't do it that way. I will do it in different way. That's what is constantly going on in your mind. That should I do the thing in one way or in some other way, or not do it at all? So it's in Sanskrit, they call this kartum, akartum, anyatha kartum. Should I do it or not do it, or anyatha, in a different way I will do it. So that's the faculty of the mind, sankalpa vikalpatmak. So with all those options present in my mind, at last I decide on something. Yes, with all these options, this is the thing I find is the thing which is to be followed. So this nishchayatmika, that after all this sankalpa vikalpa, I make a nishchaya. I just make a decision that this is the way which is ideal for me. Nishchayatmika buddhi. The other twos are chitta, which is the storehouse of all your past latent impression, is the chitta. It's like the memory house. And ahankara, it is the self which is reflecting in the mind to give you this limited sense of identity, that I am this psychophysical existence, this ego. So this faculty of mind which generates the ego is called ahankara. So it's actually the same mind, as per the various ways it works, has been termed in 4 different ways. It's mana, buddhi, chitta, ahankara. So here they speak of buddhi, the one who is ayukta, whose mind is constantly vacillating, who can never focus on a particular ideal. So they can never have this nishchayatmika buddhi. Even if they take a decision, because of their vacillating mind, it will be a wrong decision. Once you take a wrong decision and start your life, you can never have proper bhavana. This is again a technical term, bhavana. Just to understand bhavana in our secular way, in a worldly way, what it speaks of, a student suppose is perplexed that what this academic, what course of academic education should I choose? Instead of sitting down quietly and trying to think that of his own tendencies, temperament, what he likes exactly, what we do generally, what all are saying, that we just give importance that what all are saying is a proper ideal profession. So there are various thoughts going on. Someone is saying this is a good, that is good. So I never sit down to study my own mind, the tranquil mind, what will be proper for me. With thousands of opinions, at last, as per the other's opinion, I adopt one of the opinion, and most probably I have good marks to go to some professional course, I enter. And in the process, when I'm already studying, you will find what? That now you find, as per your temperament, that course is not for you. Now, how can you really contemplate on your study? Make that study your be-all and end-all of existence. Because constantly you will find that I have chosen a course which is in way not meant for me. Or even you have completed the degree, as in the last class we were saying, that as a student, I liked biology. So that my liking was with the textbook. But when with the textbook, I was doing quite well. But when I entered the medical just as the studies, the college, now for practical, when I'm taking to the hospital, seeing the sick person, seeing blood, I find my head reels. So again, the same thing will happen, that I have decided on something which is not up to my temperament. Now, how can I really contemplate on what I have decided? How I can make it my life, the be-all and end-all of my existence? Constantly, there will be a friction that I have adopted something which has become a baggage for me. Somehow I'm carrying it. So this bhavana speaks of, in spiritual term, nididhyasana. I will come to that. That once you are convinced, you take your decision, you are convinced about a decision, then you start building your life on the decision. That speaks of bhavana. When I'm building my life on that decision, my all emotive faculty, my all faculties get involved with that decision. That is bhavana. Just in the present day language, we can say that let your hobby be your profession. The thing which you really like, that has become your profession. So then what happens? The thing which you like, you have decided that this is the thing I want, and that becomes your profession. Your be all and end all. Your total life is revolving around it. That is the bhavana. So unless you have proper bhavana, there's a constant friction. So then how can there be peace? So that's the same thing which is being indicated in the next line. Nacha abhavayatah shantihi. There cannot be peace, constant friction. Ashantasya katha uta sukham. There cannot be any sukha, the tranquility, real happiness, the bliss which ensues from a let go. That can never be there because you have never chosen the proper path. Your decision itself is wrong. So that example which we give, that it is not the endeavor in our life which speaks of our fulfillment, not the endeavor. It is a paradigm which speaks of our fulfillment. Means what you think to be the ideal, that speaks of your fulfillment. The example which we give, a common example. Suppose there are two walls side by side, and there is a mango tree nearby. And to get the mango tree is laden with the ripened mangoes. To get the mangoes, I hurriedly get a ladder, keep the ladder against one of the wall, and I climb up. After climbing up, I find I have kept the ladder on the wrong wall. If I would have kept the ladder on the other wall, that was a bit nearer to the mango tree, I would have reached the ripened mangoes. This is a bit far away. So now see that if I would have kept the ladder on the other wall, as per the endeavor is concerned, as per my effort is concerned, in both the cases it is same. Whether I keep the ladder in this wall or in that wall and climb up, the effort is same. But I don't get the fulfillment, the thing which I want, if I keep the ladder in the wrong wall. So this will speak of this, the buddhi leading to this bhavana. So when you are not taking the proper decision, you find that you are far away from your goal. And when that happens, the life becomes a dragging existence, as if you're dragging with your existence. So as they say that I have just bitten more than I can chew. So now neither you can swallow, nor as it the thing you like, you can throw it out. So neither you can throw it out, nor you can swallow. That becomes your condition. So when that becomes a condition, how you can really think of peace of mind. Now here, Bhagavan, as we told, that he's taking the life as a whole. Even in a spiritual life, the same thing applies. In the present day, it applies more. Nasti buddhir ayuktasya. Sri Ramakrishna, that ayukta, who goes on hopping from one type of practice to the other. It's very common because of the internet, because of this, everything is available so easily nowadays. Because of the printing media, so many books, you just in the internet, everything is available, so many varied thoughts. And now I cannot decide. That today I start some practice, I find it is not working for me, I jump to another practice. And anytime you will find a very interesting thing. Whenever we start a new practice, we find it's very pleasing for me. And after some time, a start of boredom, the monotony ensues. And then again, we hop to another practice. At the beginning, it gives thrill, and again it becomes a boredom. Why it happens? And we continue with this hopping. Why it happens? That in the entire process of evolution, we will find a very interesting thing. What has happened? That out of necessity, we were always in search of greener pastures. As a grazing animal, just see, they're in search of the greener pastures. So the ground on which they are grazing, they have overgrazed it. Now they're in search of greener pastures. And from a distance, the other place may not be green, it always appears greener. Why it appears greener? Because here I have already overgrazed. I can never get my food out of it. So I have to move out. So the nature has created the delusion to make me move out. It will make me look the other thing as much greener. That's why they say that the opposite shore always look greener, because the nature has to force out from where we are already trying to maintain our sustenance. You cannot. So the other thing, it may be greener, it may not, but it always looks greener. And that speaks of the thrill which we get even in our spiritual jump when we are hopping from one practice to the other. At the beginning, we are evolved in such a way. Whenever you do such a new thing, first it will give some thrill. And I think, oh, this is the way for me. And then a sort of monotony comes. Why? Because any practice, as we told, unless you have resorted to the neuroplasticity by doing any practice, you go on practicing again and again, again and again, till the path is formed in your mind. And now that once the path is formed, that's the nature of the mind, it starts liking it, to do it again and again. The necessity becomes an obsession. So you have never given that time. So you were hopping. The initial thrill you thought is the happiness. And then you entered the state when the initial thrill is gone. Now you're in a state where you're yet to work on it. So the path is not created. Every day you have to exert, though you get happiness or not, but you're not willing to do that. And then what happens? You feel it is not the way for me, you jump. So that way you're restless. You can never get settled in one type of practice. So that speaks of ayukta buddhi, constantly jumping. That's why in our scripture, this what they say. So first have faith in the words of the scripture. That when I'm approaching a spiritual teacher, first I should have faith. When you're going to the doctor, first you should have faith that I know nothing of medical science. He is the one who is the authority. He has studied it sincerely, and after studying, he is the authority. Whatever he prescribes, I follow. Because if I go on asking him that what you have prescribed, just explain me, it is impossible. What he's prescribing is the result of years of study. He knows the entire anatomy, he knows the entire physiology and how the medicine works, and at last he's giving. How can he explain me just in 2 minutes or 3 minutes? He may give some idea, but it's so difficult. To a great extent, I should have faith. And then I resort to the prescription. So similarly, when I'm going to a spiritual teacher, first that faith should be that he has lived the life. And that has taken him to a certain of realization. My intellect is not yet up to it. I don't challenge the decisions which he speaks. It's not that I won't be questioning. I will be questioning. When you have faith, the questioning becomes different. When you have no faith, you are questioning the conclusion itself. What final dictum has been spoken of, that itself you are questioning. That cannot be true. When you have faith, then also you question, but that questioning becomes a bit humble question. That's you question in a very humble manner. What? That most probably my intellect is not up to it. It must be correct. Because it is a well-researched decision, conclusion. It must be correct, but my intellect is not up to it. So to clarify my doubt, I can question. So this question can be two types. One can lead to just plain argument with no result, and the other is an introspection. So that's been spoken of in our scripture, that when your mind is tranquil and you have your buddhi is yukta, you have taken this as a decision that I am choosing this path, I have decided, it has become yukta. Then what happens? Then sravana and manana ensues. That first I hear, and then taking the final decision to be, okay, that's correct. I now just humbly accept the fact that my understanding is not up to it. There must be some gap in my understanding. So I go on cogitating upon it. So from faith, this too happens, sravana, manana. So from that, That speaks of this buddhi, this without developing the faculty of controlling the mind, there cannot be proper vichara. There cannot be which results from Sravana and Manana. With the Sravana and Manana at last will give you a conclusive decision. When through Manana you at last understand, the gaps of your understanding has fallen off, then you come to a conclusive decision. Yes, with a tranquil mind, I sat down, I thought over it, and now I come to an intellectual conviction. Now I have to start living the life. So in spiritual life, that once you have that intellectual conviction, yes, now I understand it. All my doubts have vanished. As when Swami Vivekananda was teaching the Upanishads to the young brahmacharis in Belur Math, the novices, he suddenly stopped teaching and asked, can you tell me what's the utility of studying the Upanishads? Is it going to give you realization? No. Then why we are going to study the Upanishads? His simple answer was, because it removes the cobwebs of your mind. That there are so many gaps in our understanding. Those things are clear. The mind will have now a very clear vision. Unless you have a clear vision, you will never develop the motivation. That bhavana speaks of motivation to work on your intellectual conviction. First you have a conviction, then only you can develop a proper motivation. So bhavana speaks of that motivation. Now, the next, after through Sravana Manana, you have developed an intellectual conviction about your ideal, then your practice starts. You start contemplating on your intellectual conviction. You start internalizing it. So bhavana results from the contemplation on your intellectual conviction. So that's in our scriptures, in Vedanta, it is termed as nididhyasana. So you're contemplating on your intellectual conviction. This alone can result in shanti. How? Now, when you start contemplating, that in the very specific Vedanta term, they say that Brahman, the Brahma is the ultimate reality. We all are the projection of Brahman. That's very difficult to understand. Through lot of Sravana, Manana, when we really realize that I am that conscious principle. Now, intellectual understanding won't do. When the real crisis of life comes, challenges of life come, we'll find that intellectual conviction is washed off. Just the way a drug addict knows very well that his addiction is harming him or her, is destroying his or her life. Intellectually he knows that, but can he help himself? He finds that his tendencies are so strong that intellectual conviction is washed away. So he has to be in a rehabilitation camp where two things has to be done. One is slowly that his addiction has to be reduced. It is not in one day. What they do, that if you are taking a very, very high dose of whatever drugs you're taking, they will reduce they will increase the gap and reduce the dose. So that speaks of renunciation. And another thing they will do, they will help us in developing some new hobbies so that my mind is distracted into that. Something creative. Maybe it's a painting or music, whatever it may be, gardening. So your mind is distracted into that. That speaks of the bhavana, the culture. So you're renouncing something, you are trying to, now you have to live your life according to that. When I come back from the rehabilitation camp and all those good things, the culture which I was developing, I stop. My mind cannot stay in one place. Naturally, it will again go back to all the things I was doing, because it has to be kept in something positive I was not doing. So again, it will regress back. So I have to continue. So here also, when you have an intellectual conviction, you have to constantly meditate. How it will help? In the spiritual sense, as we have mentioned again and again, that what's the cause of all our suffering? It's the ego. The Brahman, the ultimate reality, is finding expression, is being reflected in the psychophysical existence. And I take that reflection to be real. And that develops the ahankara. And on that ahankara, all our likes and dislikes are hooked. When The Brahman finds expression as bacteria. You keep some nutrient in front of it, it will be drawn towards it. If you keep some poison, some toxin, it will be pushed away from it. It will be just running away from it. Why? Because once it gets identified with the body, now it thinks my existence depends on its nourishment. So I have to nourish. I should be avoiding anything which is deterring for its existence, because I have identified now myself with the psychophysical existence. So all these likes and dislikes which we have developed, so the entire process of evolution is circling around that ego. Now, when through Sravana Manana you have at last came to the conviction that I am the self, all these likes and dislikes are hooked to the ego, which is the product of ignorance. Now you constantly go on contemplating, which is the result of your conviction that I am that conscious principle. Aham Brahmasmi. Or if you're a devotee, you think that I am the spirit, Lord is the spirit, we are in eternal conjunction, we are in eternal association with the divine. No one can take away from it. This life is just a passing phase. All the likes and dislikes are just something temporal, but nothing can affect me and my eternal companionship with the divine. The same thing affects, the same happens. What you're doing with that thought, you're constantly hammering on the ego. The ego is the hub of the will on which, like the spokes, all the likes and dislikes are connected. If I remove one of the spokes, the wheel is still intact because the other spokes keep it intact. But if I remove the hub, the ego, all the spokes will fall off, collapsing the entire, this is what you say, the texture of your psychophysical existence. So here also, as if you're doing the same thing. When out of nididhyasana, that bhavana has developed, nididhyasana speaks of the bhavana. Sravana and manana leads to the buddhi, intellectual conviction. That conviction you have made it your life. You are sleeping, dreaming, living your life based on that idea. You're assimilating that idea. Then that idea becomes what you say, that the bhavana. And that bhavana, what it is doing is eradicating your ego, which is the hub of your entire, as such, the psychophysical existence, which constitutes of so many likes and dislikes. They all start falling off. You have stopped feeding the innumerable birds every day morning. I was feeding them every day, these likes and dislikes. They wanted to be pampered, I was pampering. I stopped. So after a few days, what will happen? They get the feedback. We are not going to be fed anymore. They stop coming, stop falling off. And that will result in this shanti, the let go ensues. And when the let go ensues, that gives you the ultimate sukha. Because previously what was happening, that one of the mental module was becoming active. I was pampering it. Its desire was fulfilled. I thought I am released. By the time another came. So constantly, though I was what you say, that nurturing them, but their expectation is constantly there. Now one is disturbing and the next one, another is disturbing. Sukha was something temporary. Just after feeding one, for the time being, it has went, the other is yet to come. So I was a bit happy. The sukha was something not permanent. It was just momentary. So this sukha speaks of happiness, which is never going to be disturbed. In the scripture, they speak of happiness, which is like the flow of the oil, taila dharavat. When you are pouring oil from one container to another, because of the viscosity, there is no interruption. It flows without any interruption. They say that sukha becomes taila dharavat, just like the flow of the oil, without any interruption. Because all the modules has fallen off once for all. So in this life, so all this started with what? With the focus. Let me take this way of life as my ideal, that yukta. With that came gradually the conviction came, the buddhi developed. From buddhi, the bhavana came. The bhavana gave you shanti. From the shanti came that happiness, which is never to be interrupted. So without that focus, nothing is going to happen. So in the very simple words of Sri Ramakrishna, sometimes reading the gospel without knowing Bengali becomes, you miss the charm. Because Ramakrishna has a wonderful capacity to make pun of the words. He used to pun with the words. He used to play with the words. So in Bengali, it is like this. I will try to explain because it's very difficult to translate, but still it's very interesting. Even those who, any other Indian language, those who know, they can also to a certain extent relate to it. He used to say, Je chai. In Hindi, it will be Jo chahata hai. Je chai, she pai. What you want, you're bound to get. Je na chai, take baro bhute nachaye. जो नहीं चाहता है उसको 12 भूत, ghosts, उसको नचाता है. This what he is doing in when you say na chai, there is a space between na and chai, means the one who doesn't want. So say for him, he will have to dance in the whims of all the so-called Barahut, means all those mental modules. They're like ghosts making you dance. So that when there is no space between na and chai, it becomes nachana. So nachna, nachai means makes him dance. So je chai. So you have to want something. You make your buddhi connected with something. Then only you can get it. You are bound to get it. If you don't really want something, if you are just simply browsing, if you're just simply jumping from one thought to another, it's like the internet browsing without any definite goal. So you will be just made to dance with the whims of all these mental likes and dislikes, which are like the ghosts. I still remember, I was still a student yet to join the Ramakrishna order. And the Swami who is in Sydney, Swami Sridharananda, he was addressing the students in some youth conference. He came to just conduct the question and answer session. And the students can ask all sorts of questions. Sometimes it is a good question, sometimes it's a very silly question. So I still remember one of the students asked a very silly question. It has nothing to do with that spiritual, that convention. Suddenly he asked that one question was, that's whether ghost is or not. Is there any ghost, something called ghost? And the reply of Swamiji was very interesting, very funny. He told, yeah, there are a lot of ghosts. And the next question, he was asked, where, Swamiji, where are the ghosts? Can we see them? He told, just simply dive into your mind. You can see there's so many ghosts. There are so many ghosts making you dance in their whims. That's what is happening. So unless you are having a yukta, means your mind which is focused, know it for certain, you are going to dance in the whims of all these likes and dislikes. And if you have a fixed mind, that will give you the conviction. Then you will start developing a motivation, that bhavana, to build your life on that conviction. That alone can give you shanti, and that can lead to the sukha. Yes, sorry. So that's in the 66th sloka. We saw that it was speaking of that how that without the tranquility of mind, there cannot be the eradication of sorrow. And the next sloka, the 67th sloka will say that without the tranquility of mind, there can neither be wisdom. So Indriyanang, the 67th. This is also a very interesting sloka. Indriyanang hi charatang yan manang yanuvidhiyate tadasya harati pragyang vayu navam iva ambhasi. Indriyanang hi, just you will find that just as a strong wind sweeps the boat away from its track, that the boat is following a certain direction, and the cyclone comes, the tsunami comes, the boat is washed off. It just simply starts floating hither and thither, being carried by the winds. It loses its track. Similarly, if we allow our mind to follow the senses, What to speak of five senses? Just one sense you follow, it will take you away from your track. You will be out of your track. You will get distracted, and your way will be lost. At last, it will destroy you. It will kill you. So just as the strong wind sweeps up the boat, this navam iva ambhasi. So this in the waters, the boat is flowing. That how it is carried away by the strong winds. It is swept away from its course. Even so, one of the senses, not all the senses. What to speak of all the senses? If all the five senses are active, what to speak of? Even just one sense. If one of the senses on which the mind is focused, it has the capacity to lead you astray. Because as we have already discussed, that your vision is getting clouded by the liking or disliking which is followed by their senses. It's getting totally clouded. There's a very nice sloka which I will read out. This kuranga, matanga, patanga, bhringa, meenataha, panchabhireva pancha, ekah pramadi sakatham nahanyate, yah sevate panchabhireva panchaha. It is in Sukti Sudhakar. These are the collection of various proverbs in the form of verses. Very interesting. What it is saying is very interesting. That Kuranga means deer. Matanga means bees. Patanga, insects. Bhringa, elephant. Meena, fish. These five different creatures are killed just being drawn by one of the senses. These five creatures, each being drawn by one of the senses, can be killed. How? This kuranga, the deer. You know how the hunter will be attracting the deers? With music, the sound. Hearing the sweet sound, they will play some sweet music. The deers are drawn towards that. And that's how the deers are tracked and they're killed. So just one indriya, the sound, is sufficient to kill that deer, to distract it and to kill it, to delude it and kill it. The bees are attached to the fragrance. Sometimes with the fragrance, they are drawn to the flower, and when they are sucking the nectar, the night comes, the flower closes, and the bee gets stuck in it, and that becomes the cause of its death. So fragrance, gandha. Shabda kills the deer, smell, the fragrance, kills the bees. Insects are drawn by the light. We have seen that some fire is burning, the insects come and jump on it, and they die, they get burnt and died. They die. So rupa, this light speaks of the rupa, the vision. By being attracted by this rupa, the insects die. Elephants are trapped by the sense of touch. They will domesticate a female elephant and will make they want to most probably trap a male elephant, wild elephant. What they will do, they will make the female elephant go and touch the male elephant, and then make the female elephant run. The male elephant will now start running after it, and they will have some trap in the way. They will make the female elephant run in a way where the trap is there. And as it's running, the male elephant is running after the female elephant, it will fall on the trap, and that's how it is trapped. So just by touch, the elephant can be trapped, or even it can be killed. And this rasana, this food by which the fish is trapped, in the bait you keep some insects, the fish gets lured by it, and there's a hook is on the bait on which it gets trapped, and it's killed. So each of these five animals are killed just by being drawn by one of the senses. Now think our condition. All the five senses are drawing us constantly. What will be our condition? Eka pramadi sakatham. Eka pramadi. For all the other fives, only one have resulted in pramada, the delusion, resulting in death. Sakatham na hanyate ye sevate pancha bhireva pancha. How can you think that one can be saved who is doing seva, he's serving all the five? So he's bound to be deluded. So that's the idea which is being spoken of here, that even one indriya can kill us. Then what to speak of if all the indriyas, if all the senses are constantly drawing us? So you can never have pragya. You are deluded, and the delusion will result in destruction. So after saying that, as a conclusion, the 68th sloka, what Bhagavan is saying, tasmat, therefore, asya mahabaho nigrihitani sarvasha. That's the very first thing. Don't get drawn by the senses. The senses are created in such a way, as in the Kathopanishad has been mentioned, paranchi khani vyatrinat swayambhu tasmat parak pashyati na antaratman kaschid dhiraha pratyagatmanakshat avritta chakshu amritatvam icchan. These mantras are so wonderful. That paranchi khani vyatrinat swayambhu, the Lord, the Swayambhu, has inflicted injury to the senses in such a way that they always move outwards. They never turn within. Tasmat parak means outside. Pashyatina antaratma, not going within. Kaschid dhira pratyak, the opposite of parak is pratyak, moving out, moving in. Kaschid dhira, the few fortunate ones, who are the blessed ones, who are dhira, again the tranquil. Dhira is the one who is tranquil, is calm down his mind. They develop the motivation to dive within. Kaschit dhira pratyak atman, the self which is within, is diving within. Avritta chakshu. This speaks of not only eyes. Avritta chakshu means not only eyes. He controls all the senses. Why? Amritatvam icchan. If you really want eternal bliss, eternal wisdom, that speaks of amritatva. That there is no annihilation for me as per my existence is concerned, as per my bliss is concerned. I am. So for that, that's the first thing is avritta chakshu. You have to withdraw the senses, which are ultimately going out. When you can do that, then only you can be established in bliss, can be established in wisdom. So that's why tasmat asya mahabaho nigrihitani sarvashah. That sarvasha is important in totality. Sri Ramakrishna used to say a very interesting thing, that if when you're trying to insert the thread into the eye of a needle, and the thread's fibers are all scattered, you can never enter the thread into the eye of the needle if all the fibers of the thread are scattered. They have to be one pointed. That speaks of yukta, that it has to be focused. If the desires, if thousands of desires like the fibers are dissipating, it can never enter into the eye of the needle. It can never just be focused to the ideal. So that's what Sri Ramakrishna is saying, that it can never attain the goal. So here also the same idea, tasmadasya mahava nigritani sarvasha, all, even a single fiber is, is not focused, it won't allow the thread to pass through the needle. It has to be focused. So sarvasha, all, indriyani indriyarthebhya tasya pragya pratishtita. What constantly indriyani indriyarthebhya means? This, all the sense organs are constantly being driven by the sense objects. So nigrihitani means this, you have to stop the sense organs, the organs of perception, to be drawn towards these objects of perception. That is nigriha. That is nigriha means to kill, to just totally disjoin this. Then only your pragya, your wisdom, can be established. That can lead you to the ultimate spiritual attainment goal. So in this context, just a very interesting, funny story, we will indicate that what is sarvasha in this sloka. The word sarvasha is a very important in totality. Even a little trace of desire is there, you are gone. You miss the goal. The desires has to be totally eradicated without even a trace of it. The purity should be total. There's a nice in the story which indicates this idea, which reflects this idea. How true is the story, we don't know. But its significance is something very profound. That Kabir Das, his guru, Ramananda, when he was in his deathbed, it's a very funny story. So what the disciples did to just give him some shade, they lay the bed on the shadow of a mango tree. And Ramananda was lying there waiting for the death. The last moment of his life has come. All the disciples were surrounding him. And Ramananda, in his deathbed, declared, the moment I die, you can hear the bells ringing in the heaven. I will reach heaven and the bells will be ringing in the heaven. Now, after a few days, he died. No one heard anything. Then he told, most probably in the moment of death, he was in a delirium. He spoke something which has no meaning. They revered his guru. Ramananda is a spiritually illumined soul. So most probably in the last moment, he was in a delirium. He spoke something which was out of context. But Kabir Das was highly devoted to his guru. He told, never. No, our guru's single word, not a single word can be incongruous. He's a realized soul. How can he speak something nonsense? What he spoke must be true. The others told, how can it be? But there's no ringing of the bell. The bell wet. Then others told that you have to prove that our guru, what he told, was not something just a simple, that something nonsense out of delirium he was speaking. It is true. Oh, yes, I will prove it. So then he told, look up on the mango tree. It was almost off season. Only one ripe mango was there. All others have dried. Only one ripe mango was there. Kabir Das just pointed that mango to all. So they also, yes, what has that mango has to do with our guru's death? Wet. And then Kabir Das climbed the tree and plucked the mango, brought it back. And he asked for a knife. With that, he cut the mango. When he cut the mango, one insect was crawling inside it. There was an insect inside the mango. So he took the insect between his two fingers and pressed it. There was a small insect, immediately died. And then all could hear the ringing of the bells in the heaven. Means when he was in his deathbed, he has no desires, but that ripe mango at last gave him a little desire to taste it. And immediately after his death, he has taken birth as a small insect to taste the mango. But there was no other desire, only the desire for tasting the mango was there, nothing else. So the moment it was pressed, there's no other desire. Now he is in the heaven, so the bell rang. So this is the story. Now, how much we will take it literally, we don't know, but it speaks of a profound significance behind it. That even a little trace of desire is the cause of our bondage, because it has the capacity to delude us, to gravitate us again back to this world of physical existence. It may be in any form. It has the capacity, a single desire has the capacity to gravitate us down to this physical plane of existence. So it speaks of total eradication of that to really result in emancipation. So that's what the idea which we get from the 68th sloka of the second chapter, and a few more slokas are remaining of this chapter, which you will find that it speaks of that ultimate jnana, the second chapter. Though it may give us a feeling it speaks of the ultimate jnana, but somehow we find the bhakti element is not so prominent here. Gita is a wonderful scripture which synthesizes the jnana, the bhakti, the contemplative tradition, the karma, the action. So to get that idea of that synthesis, we have to now continue with all the other chapters. Though the second chapter, we will find, somehow gives that idea of that ultimate jnana. So many will be confusing by studying Gita, that second chapter is the ultimate principle which has been spoken of in the Gita is the second chapter. All of the chapters are the elucidations of it. But that way we will make a big mistake. As we proceed, we will find that Bhagavan has synthesized all the ways in a total from a different paradigm. In the introduction, we were giving some hints to that paradigm. We will again come back to that paradigm as we go on with the chapters, which will follow after the second chapter. Another 4 slokas are remaining. After that, we will continue with the third chapter. So this chapter is going to end with that idea of that the self, which is the essence of our being. And the more we are established in that, the more we can be at peace with our life by developing a sense of serenity, which transcends the suffering. It's not eradicates the suffering, transcends the so-called suffering of life. They are there flowing. You are not touched by it. So in another 4 slokas, we will be discussing on the same lines and then conclude and then proceed to the next chapter. With this, we stop our discussion today. Thank you all. Namaskars.